Good morning. This is George Ristoff from Weichert Realtors All Pro. Thanks for joining us today on All Pro TV. Important to remember, let's make it a great day today, and let's hopefully have a good discussion today about some important topics that are out there in the marketplace, and also to be in a position that we keep our minds open for new concepts as we move forward. Just a little shout out today to Bill Aplenall. Happy birthday, Bill. Bill's one of our longtime agents. He's been with the company since its formation in 1991. So, Billy, have a great day today, and hopefully we'll see you a little bit later. Also, a wedding anniversary for me to note for my family. It would have been my mom and dad's 70th wedding anniversary today if they were still both with us. So, Mom and Dad, hopefully you're enjoying yourselves at the next level, and hopefully again we as your five kids are going to be remembering again your wedding anniversary today. Original date October 8, 1949. A long time ago, Gino. Gino Pronos is here with us today.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get to meet them, though, because I don't know if I'm going that way.
Well,
it's over.
I think you have a lot of room there, Gino. It's a long time to continue your good works as you've been doing here at Weichert Realtors All Pro.
Yep. Thanks for that good intro, George. So, frankly, I have no idea what we're going to talk about today.
Well, that's good, because sometimes those are the best.
Yeah. Less prepared we are, I think. We have no choice but to be honest in the moment. Nothing to think about beforehand.
Good.
So,
we should acknowledge first that we're in a new setting today. If you've been following our shows in the past, we're now at our new studio, also at the Weichert Realtors office over on Grand Avenue. So hopefully all of our agents and many future guests will be taking advantage of this fine facility, which has been put together by Gino Pronos in its origin from pretty raw space into the spot right now where it's a nice, very nice functional studio and ready to go for exciting and intriguing ideas as we move forward in our real estate careers.
Well, it will be one day. It's under construction right now, but
we're getting there.
Yeah, it's come a long way from where it was. So one day soon, but definitely ready to be used. So let's not just leave it sitting here dormant any longer. Let's get some people in here.
Good. That sounds great. So do you have an idea of a first question for me, Gino, today, or you just want me to go off on my own tangent?
Yeah, I want to know what's going on in the world of George.
The world of George. George is continuing to move forward, trying to have a life balance as best possible. And just got back from a couple of days out of town, so refreshed and ready to go back to work. The nice thing about our business these days, from what it used to be in the past, is that we can still stay in communication at all times with our agent base, with our clients, and with other inquiries that might come in. So sometimes a little bit easier to just take the break and get away. Would be nice if it was 100% break complete from business, but that's probably not the reality in the world that we live in today. So we do our best with that, but feeling good and coming back and ready to get going for a great October.
Yeah, we as long as we have a cell phone in our pocket, we can pretty much run our business at all times, 24/7, right? We don't have to have a dedicated space necessarily anymore, which is one of the great things about how technology is integrating into our lives and into our businesses. I see you always, you're running a high-level business here with nothing more than an iPhone in your pocket at all times. So, I think that speaks volumes to what can be done in today's world. So I find that kind of fascinating.
I think it's a blending mostly of just the successes of the past, hopefully, and trying to continue that, but then also trying to stay on top of new innovations in the marketplace. For example, just our own ability to have our own All Pro TV going, and then our social media advances that we've made with the company have been outstanding over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it should be very encouraging to anybody who's new to the business as well, because given all the technology and tools that we can leverage today, it doesn't really take a lot to get up and running. So, you know, because really the biggest key in this business is communication, right? And now that we have all these
Absolutely.
tools, we can communicate with anybody in the world instantly. Back in the day, before cell phones or before email, maybe you'll have a better idea of this than me. I bet it took a lot longer to create that line between yourselves and the clients and everybody else involved, in a transaction. So maybe you can speak about that and how that's changed.
It's really a great question, and I think of it often because when I started in the business many long years ago, we did not have all of the modern conveniences, which were email and obviously our sophisticated phones, and even fax machines weren't invented yet. That's when I was there at the beginning of the business. So what did we have to rely on? We relied on first class mail. And so attorneys under attorney review, which is still was occasionally part of the process. There was not really even a built-in attorney review provision in those original real estate contracts, which were one page long, and sometimes were a second page added for some riders. But we've expanded now. It's been blown up to 13 pages. It's great. It gives additional protections to buyers and to sellers along the way. But sometimes I ponder back and think, wow, how did we get these deals closed with a one-page contract and with just the communications level that we had? But the miraculous part of it, I think, in those days is that there was communication that was always going on. We had good backup potentially in our offices that would be handling a lot of the administrative tasks. And ultimately, we were able to oftentimes hit 30-day deadlines on closings, pretty much a matter of course. So if I had to say that the systems, all of the technology and all of the advances have aided in the process, then I would say that's kind of a toss-up at this point. One thing that I would note is with the new regulatory issues that have popped up and banking and the delivery of mortgages into the secondary market for sale, there is so much documentation that's required today that most of the delays hit in the loan process itself. So it really is not an issue oftentimes with the attorneys, or certainly very seldom with the brokers, but just trying to get it to the finish line is also a challenge. And most of it just goes to documentation by lenders. And in my opinion, of course, over documentation in many circumstances. But the lenders have to do their thing, and we have to try to do our thing, and we still have deadlines that we try to make on deals. But our typical closing timeframes today are around 45 days. When I first started in the business, as I mentioned earlier, we could try to get these things done typically in 30 days, sometimes even 21 days. But a lot of it was the lender scenarios. We'd go in, the lender would approve a loan within a week to 10 days, and then the attorneys would have the title ordered and get their survey, and then we'd be ready to close. So a little bit of a change. Flipping back to that other comment too about space, certainly it's a different environment that we live in today. But for me, I still have my own space, limited space, but I have my own space. And for me, it's easier to stay organized doing that. Many individuals have home office. Many times their car is their office because they're on the road. But for me, that works. It's worked mostly because it's been done by rote, and it's been done in the past so often that you just develop a comfort level for your process, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I was saying before, I think that should be extremely encouraging to new people or people considering getting into real estate, because you don't really need much more than a cell phone and good personality, and you can make things happen. Of course, you're going to need. It's always nice to have a workspace. Always nice to stay organized and everything like that. But if it's something that you've been considering, then you shouldn't have to think that you need a lot to get started. You don't need a lot of money to get started. You don't need a lot of tools. So there's not a lot coming out of pocket on day one. Right. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is really the key to our business, and anyone that's been an entrepreneur in the past had significant costs associated with getting into their business. For example, let's say 100 years ago, or let's say 20 years ago, you decided to start a shoe store. And what would you need to do? Well, first you'd have to get the space. You could buy it or you could lease it. Then you'd have to renovate the space. Then you'd have to make it appealing to the public if they were going to be coming in to buy shoes, right? And then ultimately you'd have to hire some people to be able to check out and display the wares of the shoe store itself. And then ultimately you'd have to have inventory because you couldn't have somebody coming in and asking for a size 7 B shoe, and then all you have on the rack are size 11 Ds. So you have to have a big inventory. You have to stay on top of styles, and you have to do all of those things. And that's associated with any kind of an entrepreneurial business, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a manufacturing company. There's a huge outlay of capital. The plus side of our business with real estate is that we don't necessarily need to have a lot of capital to start. As you noted, we can have the ability to plug into systems. That's one of the reasons why we affiliated with Weichert Realtors All Pro, because that gave us the ability to plug into systems that were tried and true systems that had been in place for itself about 50 years. Mr. Weichert, Jim Weichert, was the founder of the company and is still at the helm of the company. And their 50-year anniversary is going to be coming up this year sometime, because I remember he opened up his first office in 1969. So they're hitting the 50-year mark. So all of the trials and tribulations of running a real estate company, many of the loose ends have been knocked out over the years. And of course, we put our own positive spin to it. We have complete flexibility on our side to be able to run our own business, but we have that ability to plug into the experience that Weichert Realtors has brought us along the way.
Yeah, which is why it's very, very important or it's a big advantage to be able to plug into a franchise in this type of business, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right, there's already systems in place. There's tools you can leverage. Every step of the way, there's something for you.
I agree. Don't know how to do it. Yeah, so, completely. I've had that ongoing experience myself, and been through several different phases, from being an independent initially to being affiliated with a large franchise, to coming back into the business after a short hiatus as an independent, and then affiliating with another franchise, and then finally with Weichert. So this is our fifth business image. Consistency has always been there at the top as the owner of the company. I hopefully have been able to provide that, but we've still had some different imagery, and our affiliation with Weichert is twofold. We are looking to try to provide to our clients the best services that are potentially available, and then to our agent base, because we want them to take the ideas that they pick up from us, and then be able to transport those over to their clients, and then ultimately do the best job possible for them.
Well, I mean, again, having the franchise there, and then also having your company leader like yourself there to kind of guide everybody, there's really no excuse, I think, to getting something done in this business, as long as you have the drive to do so. Because I mean, there's no reason why you can't. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of doing it. It's a matter of showing up. Right. That's what I think. Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you can imagine through the years how many different sales associates that we've had with the company. And I have not seen a huge correlation between a lot of factors, except the desire to be successful, I think, is the key. And that can be termed many different ways. But if the individual wants to be successful, they have the tools available to it, and then the know-how, and then the drive, and they're not afraid of failure. Because in our business, it's very easy to say, oh boy, it doesn't look like I'm cut out for this business, because I've had some adverse scenarios where people have said no to me. Well, again, many, many times, especially as we deal with our society, individuals that are newer to the business maybe have never had that no tossed at them. Yeah. Whereas in the past, we used to get no's all the time. And, whether it was a cranky no or whether it was a happy no or whether it was just a no thanks along the way, it still it counts as a no. And then ultimately, what we're trying to do is ask enough individuals along the way if they need our help so that we'll provide some yeses.
Yeah.
And enough yeses provided along the way, then that puts us in a position that we can be potentially successful with the way we run our business.
I think expectations are not set correctly for people getting into the business. Obviously, most people nowadays are just going to go online and kind of do some research like that before picking a pre-licensed school, and then the process takes over from there. But I think people think it's going to be a lot different and a lot easier than it really is.
I would agree.
They don't. When someone's trying to sell you on getting a real estate license or joining a company, they don't really tend to tell you what it's really like in the day-to-day, which sometimes it's not pleasant. You got to work in the trenches where it sucks oftentimes, but you got to push through those things to get to the promised land, I guess. And that's stuff that they really don't tell you. So I think people think they're going to get their license, they're going to join a company, and then they're just going to sit back and watch the checks roll in. But they don't understand that it takes a real amount of work. You know what I mean? People want to have these lives where they can have their own business as an agent, call their own shots, and make a little, enough money to live. But they don't ever consider the part that it actually takes work to do that. Like if you have the audacity to want a life like that, you're going to have to work hard.
Right. You're probably going to work a lot harder in that than any other position you've had. But again, it comes back to that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Many individuals are coming from an environment where mom and dad or both worked for a set number of hours and received a check at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And if they did well with their job, then they were in the position where they got a small raise, or their hourly wage went up as they continued to be in the business and or to work for that company. And then individuals even are new folks coming into the business. Oftentimes they've had a similar path, and that's just part of growing up. So whether you worked in the video store, are there any video stores out there anymore, Gino? Not too many.
I think there's one Blockbuster left.
Yeah, one, just a concept again from 20 years ago that exploded, and technology's obviously changed that. Fast food hasn't been changed yet, although when I went to McDonald's recently, they tried to force me over to the machine to do a tap order, and of course, and knowing my history on it, I went directly to the clerk and the cashier, and I placed my order there. And I also left her just with a little idea that individuals that are still doing that are helping to preserve the jobs for those individuals. So there has to be a balance. I'm not anti-technology. Certainly, we're very much pro-technology. But the balancing that we see in the real estate industry is that buying a home is really the most important decision most individuals are going to make in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they're going to need some support to be able to do that. And that's kind of our role, whether it's working as a buyer's agent, getting those individuals their first time home, in that we're not only just showing them homes, we're explaining concepts to them. We're helping them understand financing concepts, many things that are completely foreign to them. Mm-hmm. And that's really our role. And then we're providing them the support along the way to get to the finish line and get the house that they want. And sellers, similarly, when they need to sell their home, they're going to need some support too, because selling a home statistically has been shown as one of the 3 or 4 most stressful things that individuals go through in their entire life. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, we're there kind of as a consultant. We're there to hopefully help them through the process. And the more individuals that you can help through the process in any given time frame, the more successful you're going to be. And so that's kind of the way that we see the business. And ultimately, we hope that our agents are similarly trained and similarly understand how personal this business is. And there are other ways to approach the business from a transactional perspective. But as you start to set individual goals as a salesperson, if the transactional part outweighs the uh, the uh, the connection that you would have to the personalities or the families that are involved in the transactions. That's where sometimes things get out of kilter. So we want to keep a balance, and that balance, just like anything else in life, balance is critical. But we still want to be in a position that we make sure that we hit the target most of the time as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting to talk about, but we don't really know how it's going to play out yet. I think it's a little too early on. Um, I don't think the person to person interaction is going anywhere anytime soon, but um, it is changing, and I think it's going to continue to change. But I have no idea what that's actually going to look like when we hit the next phase. Let's say.
Yeah. One of the things we never know what phase we're in, right?
Yeah, that too.
We don't know if we're at the beginning of a phase or at the end of a phase or somewhere
Yeah.
lurking in the middle of a phase. And there's always a new phase, a new product, a new idea to take a look at and measure
Mm-hmm.
as we go forward. I know you're seeing that right up front all the time, right? You're on the cutting edge, and through your experience and through your education, you've been able to grab onto all of these new concepts and kind of play them out in your mind. What do you see, Gino, as your challenge that you have as you have the role as the social social media coordinator here at the company?
Well, I think we are definitely right in the middle of a transition. So I think we're going to start seeing less and less person-to-person interaction through the process. Because I think part of the process can be brought um, to be made a little bit more efficient through, let's say, I don't know, some random software. You know what I mean? That can maybe keep everything on track as you go.
Sure, right.
Something as simple as signing documents. That game is kind of sped up now because you can just send it via email. They e-sign it, send it back, and it's done.
Right.
Within a couple of minutes. So stuff like that, I think, can be polished up throughout the process. I think that's going to continue to happen. Plus, I think the mindset of the consumer as we move forward is changing, and eventually, all the let's say old school thinkers are going to be wiped out. It's just inevitable. And then people,
Certainly age will wipe them out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
in 20, 30, 40 years from now,
whatever it is, I mean,
they're going to be wiped out, right? So
eventually everybody in the market is going to be, they will have already been primed to think this way and to operate this way. So I think eventually no one's really going to care about the face-to-face interaction, just because when they were born, they were already burying their face in their phone from minute one. And so as they grow up, they just become very used to that process, so they don't really care about talking to people as much. So does that mean the agent will be completely wiped out? I don't know. But I think that little by little, the necessity for the face-to-face interaction for the agent is going to dwindle down. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. But what do I know? Pretty much nothing. So we'll see. But that's what I think, because I just think people don't care as much. I think people are fine to go on Google and just search for something and then take it at face value, because that's just what they've always done. Is it right or wrong? Not for me to say, but I think that's what I'm seeing with people. Even though it's a very important decision, it's the biggest investment you're going to make in your life, like you said, when you buy a home, I think people will not really care about the severity of that as much as they used to. I think they'll literally just go on Google, search for exactly what they want. They'll get it instantly, and then they'll take it for exactly whatever random page they click on says.
Okay.
So
just like the same way they'd buy a hat or a pair of socks.
Yeah, I think as the media side grows as well, even with these 3D tours and stuff like that, people will be able to become more immersed into the searching process. So I think maybe eventually people won't even care about stepping into a home before they buy it, because they'll get such a good experience in VR or AR, where they'll just be able to get enough sense of the home by putting on their headset that they'll be fine to purchase it like that eventually. I'm not saying that's going to be in our lifetime necessarily, but I think we're moving towards that a little more every day, and I think that the companies who recognize that and are willing to admit it are the ones who are going to stay in business. But I also think there's a lot of companies out there who are just too proud. They're too romantic about how things have been up till now, and I think that they're going to be cannibalized buy all this stuff. The internet's gonna just swallow them up, and that's gonna be that. But I think that that's only gonna happen if they remain too proud to admit what's going on. Now, in other industries, not just real estate, but you see it happening all the time. Big companies going out of business because they're trying to fight what's happening. I think, you know what I mean? They're trying to keep stores open, retail stores open, and people are proving more and more every day that they don't care about going into the stores anymore for a lot of things. So instead of taking their business online where they could probably survive, they just, they just stay, romantic about the past, and then they lose. So with that said, I'm not gonna make any comment.
It's hard to give up the past romances, though. Sometimes, Gino.
It's true, but I mean,
it's a business reality. Obviously,
it's reality, exactly.
Right.
So everyone's got a choice. Every CEO, every owner of a company has a choice, and they can just say that they're fine with how it is and how it's always been, and they can just hold on as long as they can, or they can admit that things are different, and that if nothing else, there's more stuff available. So if you're not going to bother using it, you're not squeezing it for what it's worth. You're not getting as much out of it as you could. So that's the liability as well.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I think. Is any of that proven to be true? Not yet. Will it ever? Maybe not. I don't know. But that's what I think. That's what my intuition says. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Time will tell, as we say along the way, right?
Yeah, it will. Yeah, but I think it's a wonderful time to get into the business because it doesn't take a lot, like we already discussed. I think that if you can't make it in today's world, you're just soft because there's no excuse anymore. Kind of envy people like you, George, who actually made it happen back in the day when it was much, much harder. It took a lot more time. It took a lot more effort, I think. And people today, they don't seem to recognize that because they're spoiled with all this stuff. And, just literally, as long as you have a cell phone, which everybody does, you can start your own business and, make a good life for yourself. But people just, I don't think people seem to recognize that.
Yeah. One of the things you noted right at the beginning of our discussion today was the question of individuals not having a firm understanding of what they're doing when they get into the business.
Yeah, that too.
And ultimately they get in, and then they're over their head because they expect there to be immediate success or some level of success, and they just don't see it happening to them. So analytically, as we take a look at the marketplace, that's what we really see. And we are oftentimes in a position that we try to give good counsel to new agents that are coming in to the business and make sure that they have a legitimate understanding of how things work. One of the challenges I think that we always have is that the license exam itself is a time-consuming process.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay for it to the tune of maybe $500 to take the exam. You have to study very hard for it, and then ultimately you have to pass not only the class where you're signed up, the pre-license program, but you also have to pass the state exam, and then you have to spend some money, which would be your board dues, typically if you're going to be a realtor, and that's all expensive along the way. So setting the expectations up front, real important that if you had reservations about it, that you would ask along the way. And that you would have that chance to meet with the managing broker or one of the key associates in a given office, and that should help you form your ideas about the process itself. One of the challenging things, though, that I think that many individuals don't get is that they take the class itself, and the class is basically is a law class. When I was an attorney and practicing in my first year of law school, after that, I went, and the test was a lot less challenging than it is today. But from my classes in law school, I went in and I took the real estate broker's exam, which was the higher level exam in those days. We had a salesperson's license and we had a broker's license. And I took the broker's exam and I was able to pass it. And because I had had those classes, for the most part, in my first year of law. Those were classes in contracts and property and contracts in principal and agency, which is basically what we are. We are agents to the principal.
Mhm.
So those things I had, and you could pass it. So many other individuals, when they come in and they take their exam, they eventually overcome the challenges, and many today have the same challenges we had back then. It's a vocabulary question. These terms go back hundreds and hundreds of years, many to feudal times, 1,000 years, and ultimately they've carried over today. So you have to understand the past to be able to deal with the vocabulary of the business itself. And then ultimately they master that. And then they find out and learn the license laws of their particular state, Illinois in our example here. And then with the grace of the Lord and with their hard work, they pass the exam. Now, what I tell our individuals, though, when they come to work for us, that the correlation between what you've learned in the licensing class and a sales career is relatively small. I say maybe a 10% carryover. The things that you learned in the licensing class, it gives you the background. It puts you on strong ground so that you know the right things to do, hopefully, and the things that you're not supposed to do. But it does not really teach you the sales process. And if you don't understand the sales process along the way, then now you're going to still be challenged. I don't care if you scored 100% on the license exam. It's really not about that. It's really a contact business. It's a people business. Yes. And ultimately how you reach those people, whether it's direct contact or whether you reach them online through the internet, through different options that are out there, that's really the thing that you have to take note of. So perhaps we can do a little bit better job ourselves at the local level. However, many times we don't ever get that phone call because they've gone through the license process. They found out about it on their own. Yep. They've opted, well, I'm not going to really talk to anybody about it. I'm just going to go take this exam. Yep. And then they take this exam, and then eventually they do that. And the most dangerous part of this entire process is that many individuals, once they pass the examination, then they affiliate with a company that does not have a strength in the education and the training side. So I see it all the time because we have, of course, thousands of agents in our multiple listing service, but a number of them just don't understand the basics of the business, and they're kind of out there. And the hope here is that they would all have met certain standards and have been properly trained before they're in a position that they face the challenges of the business, because there's no practice round in real estate. We're dealing with a live buyer or a live seller, and there's definitely consequences that are long-term consequences to how we perform.
Right. You nailed it at the beginning, which is when you said basically the pre-license class doesn't teach you how to be a real estate agent, really. So that's what makes it all that much more important to get linked up with the right company once you've passed the state exam. Now, at that point, though, people unfortunately don't really know any better, most likely.
Right.
So they're going to go to the company that seems the most appealing, which is basically going to be if there's whatever the lowest cost is probably what someone's going to pick. So I think that's a big challenge. I think that's one area where the industry as a whole could improve, because I think, like as you said, it is dangerous for people when they do that, because if you get linked up with the wrong company, you already don't know any better, and they're not offering you proper training. Now you're just kind of out there on your own island figuring it out as you go. And some people, maybe that's better for them because that's how people learn. But for most people, I think that is going to lead to their untimely demise in this in real estate. So
you're on point on that one.
Is there anything that you can see where we can kind of clean that up a little bit?
Really not feasible. I think, again, it goes back to the individual agent's choice once they pass the examination of trying to do their due diligence on the firms that are there. And I kind of categorize them into two categories. There's firms that will just kind of sign you up and you're licensed and that's it. There's other firms that are very strong on the training side. And like with our firm, we have programs that are in place so that new individuals are not out there on their own, that they have a lot of management support at multiple levels. One of our programs, which is called the Partner Up program, permits our agents requires our agents actually to work with one of our experienced sales managers within the company, or one of our experienced agents, so that they're not out there on their own. We want them to, like any job, whether you're an electrician or a plumber, on your first day on the job, you don't necessarily want to go into the electric box and experiment.
Right.
Although you might know some more things in that area from the schooling itself, but you'd like to have a situation where you have more of that, and that's why we have these different programs of apprenticeship and journeyman and other things, which are more the trades. But that's not a bad thing, and we are hopefully going to be in a position here that individuals come in and they have that opportunity to learn. Now, many individuals think they have the answers because, again, they did well in the exam. But the practicality of how it works in the real world is sometimes different than what you expect.
Exactly. So let's just make one more final point here.
Sure.
So let's just say you're somebody who just finished your pre-license course, you just passed the state exam, and now you're ready to actually start operating. So in a very practical way, what would you recommend this agent do, or prospective agent do? Should they take face-to-face meetings with as many companies, as many managing brokers as they could? Should they look online? What do you think someone should do to get the best possible, to find the best possible match for them?
Yeah, well, I think we probably already know the answer to that one, because I'm coming from the personal contact background on it, and everyone is again different on that. Some would ask for a recommendation. Let's say you're going to go to a restaurant and you want to find out the best pizza place in a given area. Are you going to be more apt to go online and read Yelp reviews?
Yes.
Or are you going to possibly know somebody that lives in the community and say, hey, what's the best pizza place in the area? So those, again, are two uncommon directions of where you can come at the problem. And then I think probably, or the challenge instead of a problem, but I think probably a little dose of both is appropriate. So if either side gets too far out of kilter, if your friend that's recommending the pizza place gives a pizza place that you don't really think is very good, ultimately, if you've been there, because that was their own personal taste, then that's one way to go. It could be faulty. On the flip side, oftentimes when you do just rely on the online side, you can sometimes fall into traps also, where you don't have the individual connection to it as you might in a humanistic scenario. So ultimately, I think it's nice to have a blend. I would probably do some research online. I think that there's a local aspect to the business that's important in real estate. That's why we've established our 4 offices in key locations, which would include the entire north side of the city, the northwest side of the city, and also the northwestern suburbs, so that they would be conveniently located for our agent base. Because best possibilities down there, even if someone is quite a distance away, they should still be coming into our hub for training classes and the like. So some proximity to one of the offices, it would be an important factor, I would think. And then ultimately, I would really evaluate the training side, of the business, because individuals that are just working on a straight commission basis can be enticed by getting a very high commission split, or paying a small fee and getting even a higher commission split. However, at the bottom line of the transaction, or at the end of the bottom line of your fiscal year, is it better to have made 8 or 10 or 12 transactions in your first year and have a little bit lower split with that company, or is it better to have been getting the lion's share of that split and do 1 transaction or 2 transactions or no transactions per year?
There's a cost to that, right? Because you're not getting very much value at that point.
Well,
there's a reason why they can offer you more. They're not giving you as much.
Correct, but the thing is, if you can do 3 or 4 or 5 times more transactions under one structure versus being in the other structure where you're not getting, you're getting more of a limited amount. That's the balancing. And as we look analytically again and at the statistics, there's a very high percentage of individuals that are licensed in Illinois, but still do not complete any transactions in 1 year or 1 or 2 transactions a year for many, many years. And ultimately, that would probably be akin to going to the hospital or going to the doctor and having a diagnosis, and the guy says to you, well, I did one of these last year. Well, whatever it is, you can fill in the blank. I'd rather go to someone that says I did 100 of these last year, and it's much more commonplace rather than being in the scenario that you're always having a beginner's license, on that. So that's
I think it's
the thought.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely going to be beneficial for somebody who's brand new to get linked up with a company who would offer them maybe a little wider of a split, but you're getting a lot more in return in way of training and having access to everything that company has, because what you do at the beginning of your career, I think, is going to kind of dictate the success of your career overall. Because I don't think anyone's going to come in, get no results, get a bad taste in their mouth, stop in the business, and then come back later and restart. I think once you've not gotten what you thought you were going to get, you're going to quit, and that's going to be that. But if you can actually get off to a good start, you can get some results, you get a taste of what it's like to have some success, then you'll stay in the business, simply put. So I think it's very important to not just try to go for the extra dollar on day one, because that option is available. You can get linked up with a company, like you said, where they'll give you a bigger split. But what someone probably doesn't know, because they're brand new, is that you're not going to get very much in return. There's a reason why they can give you more money. It's because they're not investing into tools to train you up, or there's many tools, many variables, but it's basically because they're not investing in things that are going to help you. They're just saying, come in, we'll give you more money, or you pay us a small fee every month, and then you'll get even more money per transaction. And that sounds enticing to people on day one, but I think that's actually a negative thing for most people, because if you don't know what to do, you don't have the backing there when you have questions or you need help for whatever reason, inevitably you're going to fail. I think that's reasonable, and then you're out of the business.
No, absolutely agree. And I think all of the statistics show that, and even if you just make an analogy to a rocket ship, taking off, you really need that lift, and you need that propulsion to get it off the earth, to get it off the ground. And then once that's established, then you can kind of level off and continue to keep going up. But if you can't get off the ground, and that's really your first few months in the business.
Exactly. That's the most important part.
That's the challenge. And then the enthusiasm that's there is certainly higher for most individuals at the beginning. However, great trainers and great individuals can sometimes be dormant in their career and then can get the spark at a later point. I've gone through, like myself personally, I've gone through different phases of my career as an owner of a company, as a individual that was working on the franchise side, doing a lot of things, and then my own personal sales. And at all different stages of my own personal career, sometimes I had to reinvent myself along that period of time just because of market conditions. Yeah. So I don't think you ever want to completely rule it out, but there would definitely be a propensity for individuals to have a much better chance in the business if they get off on the right foot.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty firm in my belief that if you don't get good training on day one, and then you don't have the opportunity to actually get a positive result early on, you're going to quit, because it's not very pleasant to be working in this business without getting, the payoff in the end.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and then once you quit, you're not coming back. So it'd be my humble recommendation to do a lot of research and try to get linked up with the company who is going to offer you the most value on day one, not necessarily the most money. And whatever value, however you interpret value from that company, is what you should go off of, because every company is going to have a lot to offer, some, with some variance. So you should be the one interviewing, different brokers, different companies, different owners, whatever it is, to find the best fit for you. But try to go with a company that's going to give you a lot of value, not necessarily the most money. You'll probably find it ironic, though, that I never actually wound up Googling any companies on day one. I actually got linked up with you through a recommendation, go figure, uh, through somebody that I know. So you probably get a kick out of that.
Yeah, it is good, and that's again, it still falls back to the same idea. Even when working with buyers and sellers, even the most hardcore individuals that are out there saying, internet, I'm out there. Then when it comes time, and I see it very, very often, often through maybe a parent or someone that's a trusted individual. They'll come and they'll say, hey, we've really analyzed the marketplace and we've looked at 37 homes online, but now we're really serious. And it's kind of scary because we don't really completely know, and we want somebody that we can trust. So Uncle Joe recommended you. So obviously, if it was good enough for Uncle Joe, then it's good enough for us. Can you help us? And if you have that, can you help us coming along the way, then those are the ones, obviously, that can appreciate the value that we do bring in the business. And then I just had a recent sale where I had a buyer and we kind of hit it off, and she looked at one of my properties, and then later a couple of other ones, and that we didn't move forward on that point. But at a later point in the time frame, she actually contacted me and said, "Hey, will you represent me? I like the story that you told. I like that you took the time, to be with us. I like that you actually met us face to face. I had 2 bad experiences with other brokers that I don't need to go into the details." And I said, "No, you don't need to go into it, but we'll just do it the way that we do it, and hopefully that's going to be the best way for you." And if you have a client-oriented practice, then ultimately you're trying to keep things moving forward and get it get it to the point where you're solving client issues and answering the questions that they have, because that's the most important part of the business, whatever way you cut it.
Absolutely. So I think the key for me, what I got out of this is we have to maintain balance. We can't be afraid of the future. We can't be afraid of new stuff coming out, new tools that are available, but we have to also respect the past and how it's been done. And we have to kind of find the right merge of both of those things.
And I don't think there's any better way to have said it, Gino. Let's see if we can preserve that one. How do you, whatever you need to do to preserve that thought. And I think that's a great way to conclude today's session for All Pro TV. So again, thanks very much for joining Gino Pronos and myself, George Ristoff, for today's trip. And we will be reaching out to you soon with some new ideas and additional topics. If you are in communication with either of us, feel free to jot us a note or send us an email, or how about a text to give us an idea for a future topic for the show. Any final thoughts, Gino?
Nope.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for putting it all together for today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, George.